Okay, welcome to night 2 of Marriage Infusion. Hopefully you had a chance to view last week, and if not, if this is your first week, welcome. We're glad you're here joining us on this wonderful night for us to endeavor into really pouring into our marriages. And tonight we're doing a little something differently, and so this actually is pre-recorded. Yes, I know it's Monday night. But in order to make sure that we get the best quality out to you, we had to pre-record. And you will notice right now, if you're watching on Facebook Live, both of us are in the chat room there with you. And we will be taking questions throughout the night, and we will take those, we'll actually answer those at the beginning of next week. Okay, so tonight we're going to be covering topics that you're going to have probably some questions that come up. You can send those to our Slido platform that you see there. And or if you don't want to be anonymous, you can send them and just type them right now in the chat side. So you can say hi to everybody as you're engaging. And so it's going to be a great night. And the objective here for Marriage Infusion is to infuse life in marriages. So some of the thinking is that we're in proximity to our spouse a lot more than we historically have been, and what that means is that things that may have been lying dormant may be coming to the surface. It also is an opportunity right now to pour into our marriages and really give ourselves to the edification of our marriages. So what we're seeking health. And because really what we see is a number of the experts are saying two of the things that they're expecting to come out of this stay-at-home kind of mandate is more babies and more divorces. And so what we're wanting to do is we're wanting to see the divorces eliminated because we are giving ourselves to what does the word of the Lord say, understanding our spouse, and really pouring into our spouse.
So just a few thoughts before we get into those number 2 needs for husbands and wives. Our most difficulties in marriage come because men and women are so different. And it's really hard on the onset of marriage to identify that. We just have this tendency to think that my spouse's needs are going to be the same as mine, their perspective. And then a lot of times those first couple, whether it's weeks, maybe even days, months, years of marriage, it's like, what? And so our status quos coming into marriage are very different, and our needs are very different. So it's really important that we start to figure out what are his needs and what are hers needs, and recognizing that we're just completely wired by God differently. Not all the needs, and we're sharing with you needs. These are not going to be in possibly the exact order for you, right? Like I think we shared the number 3 needs last week, which were, I know husbands need family commitment, wives needed family commitment, husbands needed admiration. We're going to share 2 more tonight. And so those may be out of order for you, or they may be different, but we just want to talk about these different needs men and women have and how we can sow in to our spouse. Not looking at what we're taking away, but what we can sow in. Let's see. So Chris brought up last week the concept of love banks, right? So this isn't about like withdrawing, like what am I getting out of? This whole series of Marriage Infusion is what am I infusing in? Yeah. What am I depositing in my bank? And just so you know, it's wiser to make deposits than to spend, right? And withdraw. So our whole focus, my focus as Jenna Hippie, is how do I make deposits in the love bank of my marriage? Chris's focus is Chris Hippie is how do I make deposits into the love bank of our marriage, okay? So this isn't what I'm getting out of it and what he's doing wrong. This is like really for me to focus on what am I putting into it.
Yeah, and I think that that's really important to acknowledge that be our heart posture right from the get-go of this teaching time is maybe you have come to this teaching time thinking about what can I get out of it? How can I leverage my husband or my wife to give me more of what I need? Maybe you're coming with self on the forefront of your mind. And whenever we are seeking to be served, we really are really grumpy, and we realize that the most unhappy people are those that are seeking to what they can get. Anything, in every way, giving, generous people are the happiest. Generous with time, generous with money, generous with attention. It's when the more generous we are. And it's also important to acknowledge that we all hit our threshold of giving. We may be giving in our marriage, and then we wake up in the morning and say, I am done giving, now it's time to receive. If that's where you're at, this is a great opportunity to go to the Lord and receive times of refreshment and receive times of understanding that that's not how He loves us. He loves us with a selflessness in an ongoing way, not to get something in return, but that you and I would know that we're loved. And so I'd encourage you to consider what your motivation is, even right from the get-go here. Because where we're going tonight, we're going to the second most important need for a wife, and the second most important need for the husband. Again, this is just from reading books, counseling people, and it may not be exactly you, but encourage you to consider. So this is what we're gonna do. Our wives, her second highest need is...
Before you get into this, picture, just when Chris says, like, I'm done, I can't do it anymore, I want to remind you that Jesus has a well that never runs dry. And He said, I have living water, and you will never thirst again. Our flesh comes to the end of itself so quickly. We can only do good in our flesh for so long. And that's what we've been talking about. We have to be connected to the vine. And when you feel like you can't give anymore, we need to go to Jesus and go, help me to dig, help me to draw from that well, because He never runs out. He never stops loving you. And so if we can graft ourselves into that, we can drink from a well that doesn't run dry. Not that we don't need, sometimes we're hungry, angry, lonely, tired, and we need to step away and get refreshment and all that. But at the same time, I just want to encourage you, yes, all of us reach the end of ourselves in our flesh, and we are made from dust, but we can go to the well that never runs dry, and it strengthens us and enables us to do something we didn't think was possible.
So husbands, what's one of the greatest needs of your wife? If she's ever verbalized this to you or not, the second most important need that she has is conversation. It's engaging in conversing back and forth. This is not talking, this is conversing. This is not a monologue of sharing your opinion. It's actually conversing back and forth. Now, it can be a difficult thing for us to consider, because men's way of conversing is so much different than a woman's way. She needs us to converse in a way that is attached to our emotions, fully engaged and present, actively listening. This is what our wives need. It's the great principle of 2 ears, 1 mouth, and that's the type of listening that she needs from us, is a lot more listening in the conversation than talking. Now, here's what's interesting is we are all created with a default. We either default into over talking, like, man, I'm just a talker, I like to dominate the conversation, or I can fill the air with words a lot. Or the other default is just indifference, passivity. Your wife says, you're not listening to me, and you say, I heard you, and you're able to recite back to her. What's important to recognize is there's a difference between hearing and listening. Hearing is the ability to just recite what was said to you. That's hearing only. Listening actually demands all of your faculties to be fully engaged, fully present. Eyes are attentive. There's no big screen TV behind her. Your mind is not somewhere else. You're fully engaged at a heart level. Oftentimes, we as men, we don't come prepackaged this way. Because we don't talk this way with each other. We are much more transactional in nature, men to men, man to man. It's transactional communication. When I bring that communication into my marriage, it makes Jenna feel like I'm trying to fix her. It's not transactional from a husband to a wife, it's relational. This is a big difference. I can talk to another man and the goal is to solve an issue, break out the toolbox, and it can be a short, to the point, bullseye, what are you saying? And we get things done. But when it comes to talking with our wife, it's a process. It is not an objective. It's an experience, right? I can feel you smiling. She's not someone to be fixed. She's not a product to produce. It's actually a way that we build intimacy in our marriages. And so this is what Colossians chapter 3, verse 19, in a very literal Greek translation says. It says, husbands, be loving your wives with a divine love, which impels you to deny yourselves for their benefit, to deny ourselves for their benefit, and stop being bitter and harsh with them. Stop dwelling on the past and bringing that into your conversation. Start forgiving more, and stop being harsh with them or rough and sharp. I know in our marriage, there's been conversations where Jenna has said to me historically, wow, you're just harsh. This is not conversation. We don't want to have anything to do with that in our relationship. So we want to have, what conversation means is it needs to be regular. Consistency is important. It needs to be the right tone of voice. We don't get away with this. If you say something in the wrong tone, you know and I know that doesn't go so well, because your tone actually my tone exposes where my heart really is. If I'm frustrated, maybe I can fake my facial features, but the tone comes out, and the wife is hearing your words, but hearing something much different from our tone. So it's regularly, it's with the right tone, and it's with two ears. It's actively engaging in listening, conversing, asking questions. Some of you are married to a verbal processor. Glory to God. I don't have to ask very many questions. I just need to learn how to engage, listen, and say this. Tell me more. This is the best thing that I learned, I don't know how many years ago. I would just listen to Jenna, and I'd just say, tell me more about that. And I would be engaged. I'm there. And she would share with me.
It's when the tattoo parlor's open, it may be tattoo worthy. Tell me more. Somewhere. No.
Bare minimum, put it on a Post-it somewhere. But then also for those of us that have married, our wives that are more they're quiet, they're a little bit more introverted. If you are a verbal processor, man, you need to learn how to be quiet and elicit through strategic questions to really allow her inner person out. And the best thing you can do is create a safe environment for her. If she feels safe, then she will thrive. If she feels scared, she will clam up. And oftentimes that means slowing down, taking a deep breath, decompressing from work, whatever that looks like, meaning leave work aside, leave stress aside, and give her your full, undivided attention. This is going to be important because our wives' second most important need is conversation. Okay, even for the more introverted of wives, because it draws them out. It builds affection in marriage. Conversation is needed to create a warm atmosphere and a deep physical relationship. Health comes through conversation. Health comes through conversing back and forth. And I know some men that have a higher need in conversation than even their wives do. But most women have a need to have healthy, dynamic, unhindered conversation from your kids. Now, some of you have kids in the home, and they are younger, and they need attention and want attention. And the idea,
can be loud.
And they can be loud. And they could just try to hijack. You could have a conversation, and the duration of it, it's like 1 minute long because it's mommy, mommy, daddy, daddy, mommy. And So maybe those conversations need to happen after you put the kids down. Instead of binging Netflix, invest in your marriage, invest in listening and engaging, because conversation is really important. There's this Chinese proverb that's a little tongue-in-cheek, okay? It's the tongue is the sword of the woman, and she never lets it get rusty. It's oftentimes women are very relational, they're very conversational, they're process, emotional, kind of enjoy the journey conversation, while men are a little bit more transactional, practical. It's learning how to enjoy. Do you know that most women speak 7 to 12,000 more words than men? That's most women. And so men, how we bring that out in our wives, how we engage with our wives is really important. And that takes time, but it also is a place where you and I want to be engaged, present, fully ready to meet her where she is at. Okay? So conversation is really important. And if you're anything like me, Jenna would ask me questions in hopes to elicit conversations. So one of the questions I remember early on she would ask me was, how does that make you feel? And I remember looking at her going, I don't feel a thing. It makes me feel zero. Well, that sounds like this emotion. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Here's what I realized is I didn't speak emotional language. For some of you that have maybe been to a counselor, they have lists of emotional words, which could be good for you to even Google. Lists of emotional words to train yourself how to speak beyond a check-in. How was your day? Fine. What'd you do? Got this done. Wow, if that's the course of a conversation, that's not very deep. That's not very profound. And so, men, we have not only a responsibility and an opportunity to pull out and listen to our wives, but we have to also be willing to be vulnerable. We have to be willing to stretch. Remember, this is about investing in our wives and what they need, making deposits in their love bank, but it also is healing for us. I have had more healing in my life come from having a safe place to tap in. And I'll look at Jenna, even still sometimes to this day, like I don't know how to share, but I'm just going to start talking and see if I can hit the mark, that I can hit the bullseye, and I'll just start talking. And I'm learning still, 20 years married here, how to speak more emotionally, and recognize even that hurt, or that's wrong, or man, I was believing that thought. So I would just say, men, that this is not just all about our wives. This is actually, for many men, a healing that takes place. And if you have a daughter, if you ever want to be a parent of a daughter, if you have a granddaughter, it's going to be important to learn how to speak. We have 4 kids. We have 3 boys and a girl. And man, I have learned, my boys, we speak the same language. It's man. And it's nonverbal, it's inferred. But man, my daughter, I have learned so much, and I'm thankful that I have had Jenna teach me the fine art of conversation over the years.
Yeah. I just think so. A lot of this need is because this is how we're known, right? And a lot of times we don't know how we feel until we're talking about it. Just like we know God from being in his presence and having conversation through prayer, whether it's reading, praying things out, conversing with God. That's how we know God, right? Yeah. And so this is how we become known. So that's why it's a value. If you don't listen to me, then you don't know me. If I don't listen to you and you're not willing to kind of open up your heart and maybe go places that you've never been, then I don't know you. So this is really about being known. And being safe is so essential for a woman, but what precedes being safe is being known. If I feel like you know me, then I feel like you're out for my highest good and I feel safe. So we're seeking to know, you're seeking to know her, right? And and as wives, we want in. Sometimes there hasn't been that emotional language developed, but it's worth giving yourselves to, so that way you can feel like you're in one another's lives. And another thing I was thinking as Chris was sharing is we'll have times where we're trying to have a conversation and it's really clear we're energized. So what do I mean by energized? Like our blood pressure is a little up. We're speaking really, sometimes maybe really loud. Our eyes, we describe them as blazing, and it's not with like the passion of God. It's maybe anger, you know? Passion. And so we might not even be like really coming out at each other. Like, however, we'll be like, you know what? We're a little energized here, and sometimes we'll talk some things through, but a lot of times too, it's like we need to go be with the Lord and get our hearts right, because sometimes we'll be in a conversation and things that we're carrying we didn't realize we were carrying are kind of with us in this conversation. And so we have to kind of go to the Lord and deal with kind of what's happened in the day and then come back. However, I would also say those places of conversation, sometimes we verbalize things we don't even realize are going here, and it helps us discover lies that we're chewing on in our mind, and they come out our mouth, and we're partnering this. Like Chris and I were in the conversation, he's like, where are you hearing that from? I never said that, and my mind was not on the right track. I needed some gentle correction, just going, Jenna, those are lies. And so then praying through those. So sometimes conversation makes us realize things that are going on in our minds and hearts that we have no idea. But then it's also important that we take those to the Lord and have a transaction with God, because Chris and I can talk things through until we're blue in the face, but most likely there's a lie I believed or something I'm treasuring in my heart that's not of the Lord that I need to give to him and have a transaction. So sometimes that can happen together, we're praying together, or sometimes it's something I'll do on my own or he'll do on his own. But I just want, conversation helps us discover, because out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks.
It's true.
So it helps us discover what's going on in the inside and being known. And this is one of the things that I think is essential in marriages, is like Chris knows me more than anybody else. And he's seen me at my weakest moments and still loves me. I've seen him at his weakest moments and still love him. And there's a safety in that and an intimacy in that comes from that conversation. And when we say something, it's the spouse not running away, right? It's not shaming them, but it's like giving it to the Lord. And this is where now I'll say, like, Chris has been my Boaz, my kinsman redeemer, because he's seen me throw a fit. He's seen me at my worst, angry, saying mean things, and has forgiven me and has remained true to what God has spoken over me. So I just think so much happens in this field of conversation, but the heart of it is that you're known by one another. That's why it's so important.
Yeah, and as we even start drawing this conversation piece down to a close here, we're practical as men, and so let me give you some practical things not to do first, okay? So avoid conversation that seeks to get your way on your spouse's behalf. Avoid all conversation that costs your spouse. Also, avoid conversation that dwells on mistakes, that pulls up the past. That the enemy of our soul is the accuser. And oftentimes, if your conversations are dwelling on the past, that's not your spouse's issue. That's your issue. That's something that you need to go back and either re-forgive or really, truly, biblically forgive for the first time, and not allow that to be reopened, okay? Forgiveness. Avoid words like always and never. You always do this. You never do this. Avoid that type of conversation, because there's no grace in it. And it's conclusive and accusatory in nature. Also avoid it makes me feel. When you say this, it makes me feel. No one can make you feel something unless you let it, okay? What you can do, what's a healthy way of saying it is, when you speak to me in this tone, I feel. Meaning you're taking responsibility, okay? So that's healthy. You're saying, when you speak to me in this tone, I feel. You're owning your own feelings on your behalf. Also, some healthy ways is develop interest in each other's favorite topics of conversation. just because it may not be your favorite topic, learn to engage with your wife about what she likes to talk about, and bridge that gap, come across that bridge and engage her that way. Balance the conversation. If one of you are talking more than the other, then learn the balance.
Yes.
Because for those, like we've talked, if you talk more, you need to learn how to talk less. If you have a tendency to introversion, you need to practice just talking and opening your mouth and articulating.
I just want to, it can be like listening fatigue, right? And so we're all going to develop those muscles of listening because it's God's heart. He's patient. He always listens. But when I remember, because I dominate conversations in our marriage. And so I'm getting better. But I would say it's fun. It's really cool when I take pause and I ask Chris, what are you thinking? Tell me about that. Like when we're getting into his need and we're having this conversation, it's fun to just watch him like light up as he's sharing. And so it is really important, if you're the verbal processor, to make this something that you work on. Is like, I'm going to ask my spouse questions. I want to hear their heart. They've done such a great job of listening to mine. I want to dive in and ask them questions about themselves and discover. And it's going to increase that intimacy that you're longing for in conversation.
And add those 3 words, tell me more. Tell me more about that. Tell me more. I want to hear more about that. Husbands, avoid trying to fix your wife. You're going to hear things that come up and you think that oh, I need to get in there and I need to fix that. Really what she needs to do is just have you listen to her. And probably most of it is that her knowing that she's heard by you will fix the problem in and of itself. And then use conversation to inform, investigate, understand your spouse. It's learn about your spouse. It's be a student of your wife. Listen, be actively engaged. Think about your hobby that you love. Put your wife above that to learn about her. If you like to hunt or race cars or whatever, golf, learn more about your wife than any of that, and she will be blessed, and you'll be meeting a need in her life if she's ever articulated that to you or not. So you can even now start asking questions. You can even now, in the key there, you can start asking questions, or on Slido if you want to be anonymous, and we will answer those questions next session.
Okay, we're getting to his second most important need. I would love for ladies, you to kind of guess what you think that is. So write down in the comments right now as I'm sharing, what do you think his second most important need is? Because this is what I would tell you. I was shocked. It's so evident that men and women are different. Yeah. Because literally I was like, really, Chris? And so we're pulling a lot of this from the book, His Needs, Her Needs, which is kind of our resource for the week this week, is his Needs, Her Needs. It's such a great book. And again, these might not be in order, but still, this comes out on their survey. It comes out as the second most important need for men. So hopefully a couple of you have gotten to type in what you think that is, and I can't wait for us to laugh together, because and some of you may have hit it, but I was really surprised. It's actually recreational companionship. That I just still, I mean, I know I love to have fun. I love to be active with Chris, but I was like, are you need second? What? I just was shocked. Yeah. So he needs you to be his playmate. Play? Yes, which is the source of life. Have fun. He needs to have fun with you, not just like pay the bills, clean the house, play with the kids, He needs to go outside and have fun, or maybe be inside and have fun, depending upon what he likes to do. So Genesis 2:18 says, "Then the Lord God said, it is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him a helper fit for him." And, you know, as I was thinking about this, I was thinking of people going, girl, I know how to help my man. I've got a lot of ideas of what would be helpful, right? But so again, we're looking at it through what we think, what our needs are, how our minds work. He may need us to help him by going outside and playing with him, whether that's playing tennis, whether that's going fishing, whether that's even maybe going hunting. backpacking, playing soccer, playing basketball. Who knows? Maybe your husband's into CrossFit, going to CrossFit. I don't know. Maybe he likes to work on cars. But it's like, it's having fun together. But it's not necessarily like what he thinks is fun and what I think is fun could be different. Just like you may be able to like sit down and have coffee and talk for an hour and a half with your friends, and he thinks an hour and a half coffee time sounds like, what? What do you talk about for an hour and a half, right? He's like, that is like going to Mars. Well, that's the same thing for us. Like, we need to step into something new. We need to make a deposit. It's like an adventure. You're being asked to step outside of yourself and your comfort zone to show your husband love in an area he has a need. So this is how recreational companionship is defined. Developing interest in your favorite recreational activities, learning to be proficient in them, and joining you in those activities. So I want to address that this is second only to a man's need for sex in a marriage. It is so essential. So we have to go after this. Even if we think it doesn't seem important, it's not gospel driven. Well, us loving one another like Christ would love us, and if it's coming up as the second most important need, then it is important. Even if we think maybe would define that differently. So after marriage, wives often try to interest their husbands in activities more to their liking. So it's like, well, let's go do this because I like it. Like, let's go shopping. I remember shopping early with Chris. We kind of found a way to survive it, right? It's like I would go to the dressing room. He would sit out at a bench and text and call people or maybe read articles. And he considered this shopping together. Right? And so,
yes.
So this was me trying to get him to like to do what I like to do. So we don't do that very often anymore. But
no, it's amazing to me. I can be so well rested, and as soon as I walk into the mall, I start yawning. It's amazing, and I have no idea. It's just all of a sudden extreme fatigue takes me over. And I could just take a nap right there in the middle of the mall. It is that counterintuitive to me.
Yes. So this is what I would say is a lot of times for women, like we try to get our husbands to do what we like to do. Then if they don't like to do what we like to do, we encourage them, okay, so you like to go fishing, just go ahead and go with your friends. Or you like to go cycling, go cycle with your friends. You like to go hunting, go hunting with your friends. But this is where it's dangerous. Our husbands actually long to do these things with us. And often our dating years were filled with activities, and some of them were what he liked to do, and we felt so connected, and then we get married, and we have these responsibilities, and then we're trying to kind of get our husbands to like to do what we like to do, and so we kind of, shove it off, like, okay, go do that with your friends, and then maybe later kids come into the picture, and then we start to resent when they go fishing or hunting or hiking or cycling with their friends, saying, if you have time off, you should be here with me and the kids, right? So we want to be on track to develop those areas of recreational companionship together. You have anything?
Yeah, I think that part of the recreational companionship, and not all men have this, okay? But there is a large majority. So when I do pre-marriage counseling with people, I give them this thing called an emotional needs questionnaire. And oftentimes, one of the highest needs that they have is recreational companionship. Your husband may never say this to you, but he longs to experience life, and he longs to kind of show off for you to some degree. I know that sounds almost juvenile, it almost sounds elementary, but there's something about a man that loves to show his wife what he enjoys outside. And so for an example would be, when I was learning about this, a wife didn't understand her husband's fascination with golf, and she herself had no interest in it whatsoever. But to make a deposit into his love bank, she started riding in the cart with him. And initially she was just riding in the cart with him. And then the more she was there, she would give him feedback like, hey, great shot. Now, not like feedback like, wow, that really stunk. Or why did you throw your club? Not that kind of feedback, but
Holy Spirit feedback.
No. But encouragement, like, wow, that was a really great shot. Way to go. And they would laugh together, and it was interesting, the more she would do that, all of a sudden, he would come out of the house when she was in the garden and say, hey, tell me about that flower. And he had no interest in gardening, but he knew that his wife had great value in it. And so he would come out and started showing interest. And the more he showed interest, the more his wife desired to fill his need of recreational companionship. So back and forth, this is the goal. And if you're kind of stuck in this category, it takes one of you to really step out and not just do 1 or 2 times, but commit for a year at least to meet their needs. And this is a great way to do it in this kind of stay-at-home reality, to really go, hey, how can we go and go experience life together? One of the things that Jen and I have always done together is we run. And it's a great way for us to talk and converse. So it's really killing 2 birds with 1 stone. There's lots of conversing and there's lots of recreational companionship. And this is great when you have a verbal processor for a wife and you're going up a hill. You just ask a good question at the bottom of the hill and you just don't have to say a word going up that hill. It's a great strategy. Try it sometime. It's really great.
So what I want to say is, like, if this is one of his top needs, whether it's his second or not, we can't say like, well, we have kids and we don't have time for that. I just want to pause. What if you guys decided we have kids, we no longer have time to talk to each other? I mean, bang, 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 bang. This is dysfunctional, right? Well, so the same thing applies. Yeah. We have to make time. We think we can like survive and not pour into these needs, but over time, it makes an impact on our hearts and the condition of our marriages. So just as we wouldn't just be like, okay, we have kids, we don't have any more time for conversation. Yeah. We have to make this a priority, women, for our husbands. And just Chris, often when we were talking about this, men don't necessarily think about what they need unless we say, stop. What do you need? They're mostly functioning in like, what do I need to get done, right? But in that, the person that's working to provide for you, love you, lead you, all those things, there's a person there that has a need. And so we need to stop and go, hey, it's a great conversation. How do you relate to this need for recreational companionship? Like, how do you relate? What are 1 or 2 things that you enjoy doing? And then agreeing like, well, let's take some steps in making that happen. Like, even if it's just in the next 2 weeks, we're going to go do an activity and it's something he enjoys. It's not like there's not a hidden motive like you've always wanted a garden, so now you're going to kind of force him to gardening. That's lame. It's got to be something he enjoys doing. And at the same time, men, like, I know Chris has loved backpacking. I have never gone backpacking. Now we've gone camping, right? And then last year, we took a big step. Chris he was a river rafting guide, had always wanted to go rafting, right? So the kids and I went, right? And so I want to encourage you women too. It's both, right? We've got to step out of our comfort zones and trust our husbands and trust the Lord to protect us, which I can't tell you, I was praying a couple times on some of these pretty intense rapids as I'm seeing my kids go under, as I'm going under myself, right? But this, like that trip, like it fulfilled a longing in Chris's heart, right? Yes. And he was thankful I said yes to it. But at the same time, like, so we've gone camping, and this summer Zoe and I are committing to going backpacking for the first time. In the backcountry. We're 20 years in. Okay, we've gone camping. I can't say that our little car campings have scratched that itch for Chris, but he's excited about it. So it's both. Like, ladies, we've got to partner in doing things that he wants to do and likes to do without shaping it. But then also, I want to encourage you. So husbands, be gracious. But ladies, I want to encourage you. You're going to step out of your comfort zone. But we trust the Lord, right? And we're making a deposit in our marriage. I wrote this question down as I was processing and preparing. What if your act of obedience to Jesus is taking interest and learning and spending time doing something you don't like, but he does? Yeah. Because he's worth it, right? Because I love Jesus and I love him, so he's worth it. And I've noticed God is always faithful to bring some level of enjoyment to whether I actually enjoy the activity or I just enjoy being with him. And Chris and I were talking about, this is when men open up. When we go do things that they like to do, natural conversation flows. Like Chris was sharing about how our former neighbors, Taylor and her little son Levi, would go out and shoot hoops, and he would just be talking. And Chris just said, it's pretty amazing how they open up. And she's like, this is the only time I can get them to talk. So I just want to encourage you wives, like maybe it's kayaking. Maybe your husband likes to kayak. I don't know what it is. But that there's an opening up that happens when we go play with them. And it's good. This is what memories are made of, is taking some time to go play. So I just want to encourage you to do that.
And I would just add, husbands, there's a compromise here. And so if recreational companionship for you is going elk hunting up into the Olympic Mountains, that's probably, for a week in the rainy rainforest, that's probably a heavy sell for a wife.
Especially if you have kids.
Oh man, you made a dial. You need to compromise. Find a place. For us, I put my backcountry backpacking gear away, my rock climbing gear away, and we started car camping. And you know what? For the stage of life we were at, for as old as our kids were, that was the right compromise. That was the right place for us. But now that they're older, we get to do things like this whitewater rafting trip and jumping off cliffs. And it was so much fun having our boys in whitewater kayaks and the girls in the big raft with me. And that is a ton of fun because we're making memories together. But husbands, you got to lower your expectations contingent upon the reality of your life also. Okay, so let's crawl before we walk, before we run. If this is a newer thing for you,
and I would just say, like joint participation is ideal, right? The two of you doing something together is ideal. But it's also really beautiful. Like I know we have like a church softball team. Is it? Yeah, softball league. And so maybe you have a lot of kids, and maybe the wife was just coming to the game and cheering the husband on, right? Not like, does that make sense? It's like, it's wonderful. And then that's an opportunity where he gets to like perform for her, which is, that's how God wired men, is they want to protect, provide, direct, and they want to impress. They want their wives to admire them. So you can support your husbands, whatever stage you're at in this need, but we really want to encourage you. It's great for us to have friends. I mean, it's great for Chris to do things with brothers. It's great for me to do things with sisters. But it's like, it's good for us to do things together, to develop memories. It's good for us to start that and then to bring our kids into it because we're developing memories. And then it doesn't have that resentment of he was gone for 5 days on this trip and then he wanted to do this. Well, maybe there's a middle ground where we're like, hey, what if we do a one night overnighter for 2 days together doing what you love to do? So
we're talking about the second highest need for our wives is conversation. The second highest need for husbands is recreational companionship. And I'm sure as you're watching this, you're probably coming up with some questions. And this is really important for this time that as we're gathering with you on this Monday evening, and we're in the chat with you, to even start asking questions in the chat. Asking questions if you want to stay anonymous in the Slido app that you can see the link there. And we're going to answer those questions at the beginning of next Monday night. We'll answer those questions together. And so last week our theme was humility. The goal was humility. And you may look back and say, I don't know, if that was it. Maybe I was successful, maybe I wasn't, or maybe I was batting zero and I made some good decisions along the way.
Hey, revelation is a lot of the game. So if you just were like, wow, I saw so much pride and selfishness in my life. Hey, you're winning. You saw it. Like before you were functioning in it, maybe you didn't see it. So revelation's a win.
This week, the theme is to be generous.
Yeah.
To seek to be generous with your time, with your attention, with your conversation, with your recreational companionship. Be generous with your spouse. If you're going to give extra to anything this week, give it to your spouse. And also the resource that we're highlighting this week is His Needs, Her Needs by Willard Harley. And great classic book. And there's numbers of others of them that are out there, but encourage you to get your hands on that and endeavor into that. Also, you can Google the Emotional Needs Questionnaire online, and I think it's put out by Marriage Builders, and that could be even a fun exercise for you to do together. And so, Infusion of Life.
Yeah, a couple closing thoughts are every couple has a choice to let unmet needs hamper or even ruin their relationship. So we can decide to learn about these and just go, they're not important, or we can really put on the effort to pour into each other and meet each other's needs. Coming together to meet each other's needs is always the best solution, right?
True. Me
seeking to meet Chris's needs and him seeking to meet my needs is always going to be the best solution, thinking of each other first. The truth is, some marriages hide their deepest needs from themselves. Like we just, when I was saying, men aren't, some men, not all, aren't even in tune to their needs. They're just getting it done. But then over time, that they don't realize that a need hasn't been met until it's too late, right? Until there's severe damage done. So we want to be in tune. We want to be infusing our marriages with acts of love and obedience and learning and growing together. This is a little quote that we found, is the couple that plays together stays together. So be playful. Permission right now. I mean, seriously, there's only so much we can work. I mean, everything's slowed down. We have time to play. So whether that's getting on a bike or going for a bike ride, or I don't know, start bird watching. We're not big bird watchers, but I mean, we'd have to be on quarantine for a really long time.
Really long time.
But just this is a time. Start talking, start playing. So we just want to encourage you to invest, be generous. We love you guys. We believe in you, and we're praying for you.
Yeah.
We have a real heart for marriages. So let's come out of this better than we went into it.
Yeah. So ask your questions, put them in the chat, put them on Slido, and we look forward to engaging with those and answering those on the front end of next week's teaching. So have a wonderful Monday evening, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Bye.